Okay, let's restart. Okay. So, good afternoon. Okay. So let's welcome everybody. Please mute yourself, but always show your video pictures. Sign in your name, Facebook account, or email address in the chat box. Please include names of companions attending. Use the chat box to ask questions and make comments while the pep talk is on. Okay. So there'll be group pictures at the start and end of the pep talk. As a reminder, please take the online learning kung evaluation exercise for OLET for mastery of learning and have a certificate to get after getting a perfect score. The link will be placed in the chat box by Abet. Okay. And then just as a reminder, 50 OLET certificates will entitle one to a voucher for ROJoson telemedical consultation. Okay. Let's now have a group picture taking before we start the lecture proper. Okay. Ready? Everybody ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Again. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Let's have the I have a patient empowerment program in which I like to empower the lay people or patients to take control in management of their health. There are 3 courses in the PEP Talk. I completed the core course on October 9, 2021. And from October 23, 2021 onwards, I have been tackling health disorder and health issue courses. This may take 3 years or longer. My PEP Talk today is entitled Fever and Paracetamol, Myth and Tips. This is part of the health issue course. The empowerment objective is for the lay people to have an understanding of the issues involved in fever and paracetamol. In this time of the COVID pandemic in the Philippines, March 2020 up to the present, almost 2 years, among other things we commonly hear and see in the news from newscasters, physicians' advice, and patient sharing, the varying perceptions and recommendations on fever and paracetamol. Fever and paracetamol are always in the news, especially in this Omicron surge. Examples, when you have fever, suspect COVID-19. When you have a temperature of 37.5, you have a fever. When you have fever, take paracetamol. The branded paracetamol is out of stock in drugstores. This is a common news this early part of this year, January, etc. So with the varying perceptions and recommendations on fever and paracetamol being disseminated by newscasters, physicians, and lay people, the public is naturally and expectedly confused and anxious. So, a case in point, I put up a post in my Facebook last January 16, 2020, and I said, medications only as needed for moderate to severe symptoms. Paracetamol for fever 39 degrees centigrade and above only. Okay. So there was a reaction, there was a feedback, a message to my messenger showing, stating, by the way, may typographical error ba kayo regarding the time to take paracetamol? Kasi nakatype doon 39 degrees centigrade. Tama ba na if adults is 37.9, they need to take na paracetamol? So I answered the feedbacker, no, hindi siya typo. No? Yes, I stand by my writing, it's 39 degrees centigrade. Then I reinforced my response with a published quote from an infectious disease specialist. Okay, and he said, give paracetamol only if the temperature is more than 38.5 degrees or if the symptoms are really troublesome. I means the infectious disease specialist, usually allow low-grade fever, which is equivalent to 37.5 to 38.5, to occur because this is also part of the body's response to kill the virus. If with low-grade fever, just take a bath, wear loose clothing, and take a lot of fluids and rest. So this is the response. This is the quote that I showed to the one who sent me a message. Okay, just to reinforce my writing. Somehow it's this on the same line, but there are some differences because mine is 39. Here it's 38.5. Okay. So this incident prompted me to do a pep talk on these issues right away while it is hot, to correct the myth and to give the tips. That's why I delayed the topic on thyroid cancer for next week. Okay. So what are the issues associated with fever and paracetamol? Okay. For fever, the question is, what are the common perceptions and practices with regards to fever that are considered myth and need adjustment, if not correction? Myth by both the public as well as the healthcare professionals. So the healthcare professionals are not immune from this myth. Common issues are, what is a fever? When does one say one definitely has a fever? What is the temperature that will definitely signify one has a fever? And what is the meaning and significance of fever? As to paracetamol, what are the common perceptions and practices with regards to paracetamol that are considered myth and need adjustment, if not correction? Again, the myth is being committed by both the public as well as the health professionals. Common issues that I will be discussing today will be, what are the uses of paracetamol, and thus one has to take paracetamol all the time when one has fever. So let's start with fever. So these are the common issues. I'll go through each one of them one by one. So what is a fever? A fever can be defined as an increase in the body temperature felt by a person as unusual warm or hot sensation, or an N-/N registered in the thermometer as elevated above a value that is rightfully accepted as normal. So if the normal value is 37 degrees centigrade, then anything above 37 degrees centigrade is a fever. If the normal value is 37.5, then anything above that is a fever. If the normal value is 37.9, then anything above that is a fever. So the main issue is, what is rightfully the normal value? Okay. What is the normal value? Okay. So if there is an N, the person felt some warmth, and then N registered in a thermometer as something elevated, okay, most likely the person really has fever. So 99.9% the person has fever. If it's an or, sometimes a person feels there's warmth, but the thermometer does not register a value above a normal, the so-called normal value. Okay, so the degree of certainty of fever is not as high. It's still possible, but it's not as high as in the situation in which there's an N, A, and D. Okay, so to prove that there is really fever, ideally a thermometer determination is advisable to validate the warm and hot sensation, which is a subjective feeling by a person. If normal, if the temperature registered in the thermometer is normal in based on what is accepted as normal, then the warmth or warm sensation may be non-specific or transitory. If again, if or is the case, a thermometer reading above the normal value without warm or hot sensation needs to be rechecked before declaring the presence of fever. That's why I said if it's or, the degree of certainty of fever is not as high as if you have a situation in which you have the N. Okay? So when do you say you definitely have fever? So it should be N, okay? And not or, okay? So what is the temperature registered on the thermometer that will definitely signify that one has a fever? Okay. So the issues are what is rightfully the normal value, the normal temperature, what value above which should be considered the presence of fever. There's a myth going on, okay, up to now, okay, the so-called myth of 37 degrees centigrade as the normal value and normal temperature. Okay, the background for this myth is that history-wise, in the mid-1800s, a German doctor called Wunderlich measured the armpit temperatures of about 25,000 people, probably in Germany, came up with an average of 37 degrees centigrade. So since then, even up to now, 37 degrees centigrade is considered as the normal value, the normal temperature. Okay, so everything that is above 37 degrees is considered fever. Okay. So, but newer research suggests that the number has since gone down. Remember, that was an experiment that was a study done by a German doctor in 1800. Okay. Nowadays, the records from three periods between 1860, the time that the German doctor did the research, and 2017, okay, about 5 years ago, there were 677, 423 measurements done among Americans. This is among Americans, showed that the average temperature is now down to 36.6 degrees centigrade. Okay, so the explanation for this lowering of the temperature, the normal value, the core body temperature, is that probably in this day and age there are lower metabolic rates, lower infection rates, and better thermometers. Okay, so the question is, should we adopt 36.6 because of this study? Okay. In the Philippines, we don't have similar research that has determined the average body temperature of normal Filipinos that one can use to help us determine what value to consider normal and what is to be considered as fever. Okay, so it may be that we Filipinos have different body temperature compared to the Americans. Okay. So in my 1 year of experience, last year up to this month, okay, in monitoring the temperature of Filipinos during the COVID crisis, I discovered and noticed the trend for body temperature to be lower than 37 degrees centigrade, mostly 36 plus or minus, okay? So example here, this is a monitoring sheet submitted to me by one patient with COVID-19, okay? So on September 23, morning temperature 36.6, afternoon 36.5, evening 35.8. September 24, the next day, okay, morning temperature 36.8, afternoon 35.6, evening 36.9. And then the next day, different also, but I just because I asked the patient to monitor for about 10 days. Okay? I just pick out 3 monitoring data. On September 27, temperature morning 36.5, 36.4, afternoon 35.9, and then evening 36.8. So one can see that more or less it's about 36, okay, plus or minus, okay. Then it differs from morning, from its time of the day. The body temperatures differ from persons to persons. Okay. In different times, it also differs in different times of the day when you have varied kinds of activities and different environment. Thus, it is better to talk of a range of values rather than a single value that is considered to be normal, above and below which if it's abnormal, you either call it hyperthermia, the technical term, the medical term for fever, and hypothermia below the normal. Okay. But at present, majority of experts, including the Center for Disease Control, which is a very well-respected organization, consider 38 degrees centigrade and above as hyperthermia, and 35 and below as hypothermia. Okay. Hyperthermia is more common than hypothermia. Up to now, there is a lot of confusion going on among lay people as well as healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, and organizations, medical organizations, as to what constitutes fever. So this confusion has a lot of potential negative repercussions or side effects, confusions. Okay. So in the COVID-19 pandemic and crisis, we have to know what measured temperature is considered fever. Okay. Because fever is the primary symptom used to suspect COVID-19 and to monitor the course of the infection. So as I said, there are different perceptions between and among lay people, nurses, and physicians. And this was proven by a survey which I did last year in April 2021. So I asked about 100 lay people, 100 nurses, 100 physicians, and these are the results. Okay, so 107 lay people, 191 nurses, 171 physicians. This is a local study. Okay. So you can see the varied different perceptions between and among the lay people, nurses, and physicians. Okay, so 36 to 39. Okay, at least for the lay people, they don't consider 39, but 38 is still a fever to some of them. Okay, for physicians, you can also see the range. Okay, some would say the normal is 36. Some would say it's 38 or 38.9, or some would say even 39 as the fever. So you can see the confusion that can be caused by these different perceptions among the different people and also among the different health professionals. Okay. A potential negative repercussion is that not having a common interpretation of the temperature gotten from a digital thermometer will lead to a miscommunication among people, particularly among lay people and physicians. Okay, when you consult a physician, what's your temperature? They will say this and that, and then he will say, the lay people will say it's a fever, but the physician will say it's not. And between nurses and physicians, the nurses will refer a patient with a temperature of so and say that she has fever, but the physicians will say, no, it's not yet fever. Okay. So the miscommunication may lead to wrong decision-making and actions. Another potential negative repercussion is if a patient wrongly thinks a fever is present because of a certain temperature reading, he or she may panic and think he or she may have COVID, as a fever is being considered as the primary symptoms in suspecting the disease in this time of the pandemic. He or she may go for a COVID test, which may turn out to be uncalled for because of a false interpretation of the fever. So you can see the negative repercussion here. So it's important that we must know what is really fever. All over the world, the Philippines included, Okay, there is no uniformity or consensus on what one specific measured temperature is to be considered fever. Okay, among the organizations. Okay, earlier I discussed the different perceptions of people. Now it's the organizations. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention in the USA uses 38 degrees centigrade as fever. The World Health Organization, 37.5 for the armpit temperature and 38 for the rectal temperature as a cutoff temperature for fever. The Department of Health of the Philippines, based on infographic, used 37.5 as the cutoff for fever. The Philippine Society of Microbiology and Infectious Diseases, which is supposed to be the specialist on this, has not declared any cutoff for fever. So how do we resolve the issues? As this is creating confusion. Okay. So the body temperature, as I said, differs from person to persons in different times of the day and different environments. Thus, it is best at the moment to take and monitor your own baseline usual body temperature so that you can use it as a basis for determining your own fever when it occurs. Because as I said, the temperature differs from person to person. Okay. So example, okay, so this is what I would suggest that all of us will do for 3 consecutive days, 3 times a day, different times of the day, using a digital thermometer, measure your temperatures either using the armpit or the mouth or both, and get your usual baseline. Okay, so example, column 1, day 1, 2, 3, then different time of the day, okay, morning, afternoon, evening, okay, and then you get the average the whole day, and then get the average of the 3 days, okay. So after computing and determining your average general body temperature for both armpit and mouth, or just one can do, keep these records and use them to determine presence or absence of fever in the future. So in the future, if you feel some warm, hot sensation, you know what's your normal values, okay? Then you take the temperature, and if the temperature show that there is at least 1 centigrade elevation, then you can say definitely you have fever. At least you have a good basis. So example here, using the one that I mentioned earlier, a patient, okay? So she registered all this temperature on the first day, and then on a morning, second day, okay, in the afternoon, then in the evening, okay, and then the average. So the average turned out to be 36.4. So anything that will be 1 degree centigrade above this, okay, in the future, okay, and then if the patient is feeling some warm sensation, then she can say that he has a fever, okay. At least it is justified to say so. I have a fever because my normal body temperature is just 36.4, and then I feel some warmth in my body, and then my temperature now is 37.4. Okay, so I think I have fever. So in the meantime, but this is easy to do, just 3 days. But in the meantime that you don't have the baseline temperature of your normal or usual body temperature, you can use 38 degrees centigrade as the basis for determining the fever. But as I said, you should also have an accompanying warm feeling or warm to touch of your body to complement the measured temperature for a diagnosis of fever. Okay. So at the moment, what is used by the CDC is this one, 38 degrees centigrade is low-grade fever, 39 degrees centigrade is considered moderate, and then 40 degrees centigrade is high-grade fever. CNAT versus lagnat. So we know that Filipinos commonly use the word CNAT. What does it really mean? I don't exactly know the answer. There are a lot of interpretations, okay, hand-me-down information. So it may mean low-grade fever, but here is my take on the issue. how to resolve it. If lagnat is fever, and fever is 38 degrees centigrade, okay, as recommended by CDC, or at least 1 degree centigrade higher than your usual body baseline temperature, then what is CNAT? So that's the question. Okay. CNAT is an unusually or persistent warm or hot feeling. If this CNAT is accompanied by an abnormally elevated temperature, at least 38 degrees centigrade, then it is in reality a lagnat, a fever. Okay. If it is not accompanied by an abnormally elevated temperature, then it remains a CNAT, okay, warm or hot feeling, and not fever. It cannot be mild fever, as 38 degrees centigrade is operationally defined as low grade or mild fever. Fever or lagnat is said to be definitely present if an increase in the body temperature, okay, one, it's felt by the person, okay, some warm, hot feeling, and it should be and, not or, registered and in a thermometer as elevated. It's either 38 degrees centigrade or 1 degree centigrade higher than your usual baseline temperature. Okay. So as I said, again, body temperatures differ from person to persons in different times of the days with different kinds of activities and environment. Okay, I will add two more factors that will contribute to the differential temperatures. So where the temperature is gotten, okay, mouth, armpit, rectum, forehead, hands. Okay, these are the common sites of the where the temperatures are being gotten. Okay, so as a rule, rectal temperature usually register the highest. Okay, okay, it's not the same as in the mouth as in the armpit. Okay, so in the armpit and probably in the forehead is they register the lowest. Okay, so the other factor that can contribute to the differential temperature will be the types of thermometer. Okay, so for practical reasons, just take the armpit or the mouth and use the least expensive digital thermometer that you have, but always try to check the accuracy of that thermometer. What is the meaning and significance of fever? Fever can be caused by a lot of things. There are two categories of causes, the non-specific causes and the specific causes. The non-specific causes are those which the exact cause cannot be definitely identified or established. Okay? This is a reality. Okay? Specific causes are those in which the exact cause can be identified with definite certainty. Okay? Examples: fever caused by excessive exercise. Excessive exercise can also cause fever. Okay? Environmental fever, fever caused by infection, and other factors. Fever is not a disease. We have to remember that. Fever is not a disease, and it is not the disease. It is a reaction of the body against something disturbing it. It's a symptom felt by a person that may signify that a medical condition or a disease is going on. It is a protective mechanism and a sign that in body's immune system is going on. Okay? This is very important. Okay? Fever can spontaneously disappear even without treatment because the body can take care of itself. Okay? Fever can and should disappear after active treatment if needed, especially after removal or resolution of the cause. So the basic principles in the management of fever, a person with fever, first treat the cause of the fever if identified before considering treating the fever itself. Remember, fever is a symptom or a reaction, and it's not the disease. Second basic principle is treat the fever only when indicated and properly. This means you don't have to treat all fever all the time. Treat the fever only when indicated and properly. So some ways to treat the fever. One, rest. It must be done. Plenty of fluids. It must be done. Loose clothing and cool environment. It must be done. Lukewarm bath. It must be done. And then the third one, the last one is the drugs, okay, which may be used only as indicated, and it may not be needed after all. Okay. I will expound on this one. Okay. But before I expound on that one, let me say that the paracetamol are the drugs commonly used for fever. It can also be used for pain killer, okay, for pain. Okay. So the action of the paracetamol is on the area in the brain that regulates the body temperature, which is the so-called hypothalamic heat regulating center. For adults, the dosage is 500 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams every 4 to 6 hours. The allowable maximum is 4,000 milligrams per day. Okay. So leave at least 4 hours between recommended doses if you have to take it every now and then. And then it is not recommended for more than 5 days. Okay. The reasons for these recommendations is that because of the danger of the paracetamol on the liver. Okay. So an overdose can lead to liver failure. So as much as possible, avoid taking paracetamol for fever. Use it only for high-grade fever or severely uncomfortable, hot feeling, not relief by cooling environment. Remember, fever is a protective mechanism and a sign that the body immune system is going on, helping the body. Allow the fever to do its job of fighting against the cause or infection. Just like we try to kill germs by boiling or burning, the body increases the body temperature in an attempt to kill the infecting germs. By actively controlling fever, say with paracetamol, we are actually suppressing the body's own mechanism of fighting the infecting germs. And recent studies, researchers have shown that the higher the temperature in patients with severe bacterial infections, the better is the chance of survival of these patients. So it shows that fever has some beneficial effect. Blocking the fever can be harmful because fever, along with other sickness symptoms, evolved as a defense against the infection. Fever works by causing more damage to the pathogens, the virus, bacteria, and infected cells than it does to the healthy cells in the body. Okay. So this statement is gotten from this particular journal with the title, "Let Fever Do Its Job, the Meaning of Fever in the Pandemic Era." Okay. And the recommendation is for infections with COVID-19, we advise that fever should be allowed to run its course. Other reasons for advising, as much as possible, avoid taking paracetamol. The fever may disappear even without taking paracetamol after the body immune system takes control or control the inciting cause. So meaning you just watch and wait, eventually it will disappear. The other reason is to use the temperature as a monitoring guide to see if the person is getting well already without paracetamol. If one takes paracetamol, the temperature will definitely go down, so it will create an artificial effect. The fever will be hidden, and there will be no good gauge of monitoring the patients, no good gauge of recovering, okay, or whether the patient is recovering or not. Okay. So this particular reasoning is reinforced or supported by, if you look at the COVID guidelines, locally as well as abroad, okay, there is a mention of one criterion of recovery and ending of isolation. Let's say you're asked to be isolated for 10 days, 14 days. So the one of the requirements will be the person has no fever for 24 hours at least. Some would use 3 days at least. And then the other specification is that when you don't have fever, make sure that you are not taking any fever reducing medications like paracetamol. Okay. So summary and takeaway. Okay. I have discussed the issues involved in the fever and paracetamol. I've given the tips, the myths, as well as the tips. Okay. And then basically I talk about the definition of fever, and I explain something about, explains the difference between sinat versus lagnat, how Filipino use the word sinat, and then the meaning and significance of fever. I also talk about when to use and not to use paracetamol. Takeaway in relation to patient empowerment: be always in touch with reliable medical information on issues on fever and paracetamol. Knowledge is power, it gives power. So use the 4Ks of patient empowerment: kaalaman, kakayanan, karapatan, and kapangyarihan to gain greater control over decisions in managing fever and using paracetamol, not only in these times of COVID pandemic, but in any other time. The principles apply. So with that, I end my pep talk today, fever and paracetamol, myth and tips. I hope I have empowered you to have a better understanding of the issues involved in managing fever and using paracetamol. So before we go to the question and answer portion, as a reminder, please take the OLETE for Mastery of Learning and have a perfect score to get this certificate. The 50 OLETE certificates entitle one to a voucher for free medical consultation. So let's now have a group picture taking before we start the QA. Show your face. Show your face. Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I'll just give it. Okay. So the floor is now open for questions, recommendations, suggestions, reactions. Okay. Any questions? Are there questions in the chat box already? Any questions? Who has fever? And how is your usual practice? Take paracetamol right away. I suppose when you have sinat, you don't take it. But once you feel that you really have fever, you take paracetamol right away, rather than just wait. Right? Any questions? Okay.
Doc.
Okay, Aida, sure.
Yes, good afternoon po.
Good afternoon.
Doc, yung convulsion, okay, lalo sa mga bata, medyo talagang naaalarma ang mga matatanda.
Yeah.
Kasi nga, yung parang kung maaalarma para hindi dire-diretso yung taas ng lagnat kasi nakakakita po yung mga kinukumbulsyon na bata, kawawa naman. Lalo ngayon pong mga very contagious ang Omicron at maraming bata po ang talagang natatamaan ng COVID. Doon sa mga bata ay wawa naman po. Maaawa ka po talaga sa mga bata kasi matamlay. So, hindi yung playful. Kaya siguro po very alarming pag nagtaas na ng 38. Kaya po siguro nagkaabuso ng tempra.
Kaya nga, okay. Number one, two things there in your question, yung convulsion and then yung feeling of weakness, no? Okay, in this time of COVID infection, okay? So yung theoretically anything can happen once you have fever, okay? Fever can, high-grade fever can cause convulsion, but it's not so common, okay? But that's why we're saying that anything in the problem-solving decision-making in medicine, it's not 100% certain all the time, and it's not absolute, but you have to balance it. You have to balance the benefit and the harm, okay? So number one, if you have a patient with a history of convulsion in the past because of fever, then you have the right to give the patient, the child, the paracetamol, okay? Just to avoid the, let's say instead of 39, you can give it a 38, 38.5, no? Okay? But to use it for all patients is not really reasonable, okay? Because you're treating so many patients just trying to save one or two with possible convulsions, no? Okay? Now, it's true that the weakness of all the patients nowadays in the Omicron, patients is weak, patients has a feeling of sickness, but it's not because of the fever, it's because of the Omicron infection itself. No? So remember that the fever is just a manifestation of the infection. And usually, okay, I hope I can probably have we can have a show of hands today, this afternoon, yung mga nagka-COVID na yung walang can you did you experience that the fever just go away in 1 or 2 days? Ang matindi sa Omicron yung sore throat, yung cough, ang tagal nun, no? But the fever just spontaneously disappear, no? After 1 or 2 days. Bihirang tumagal yung fever sa Omicron ngayon. No? Okay. So, is that correct? Would those who have experience with patients with Omicron?
Hindi. Ito ang mga sangaling.
Sige. Pero okay, kung wala okay, okay. So it's nice that you don't have experience with patients with Omicron with COVID-19. That means you're not experienced.
Doc, ako sa mga apo ko, 4.
4, okay.
Na bata, age, una yung age, 3.
Okay.
Nahawan, lumabas lang, nagpunta ng MOA. Okay. And then, nag-antigen test, negative. And then, yung isang apo ko po din, negative. Nagkahawaan din, pero sila nag-positive na after, siguro ang gap nila mga 2 days lang po. And then,
Sige, 2
yung
days.
isa naman,
Okay.
yun naman, may indicator po kasi, pag walang lagnat, yun ang common knowledge po siguro.
No, but from yung sa 4 na yon, ilan ang nagka-fever?
Lahat, 4 po.
Okay. And then, kailan nawala?
Siguro po 2 days, no?
2 days lang, kita mo. Huh? 2 days, 1 to 2 days lang yan. Sabi ko, mawala ka agad yan.
Yan po talaga.
Okay.
Pero yung pong discomfort,
Yeah,
ikaw mo bata, and then hindi ka tulad ng matanda na pwedeng labanan. So, siguro po emotionally, na po siguro.
Okay,
affected.
you have to differentiate the two, ha? Baka nako-confuse ka. The fever, as I said, the fever, 2 days lang, okay? Based on your experience. From my experience, 1 or 2 days lang nawawala na yung pusa, no? Okay? So it's not the one causing the ill feeling, no? It's the infection itself, no? Okay? The fever is just a symptoms that the patient is fighting the infection, okay? So kung nawala na siya, no? Ibig sabihin, medyo may panlaban na siya, okay? Okay? So yung weakness, yung mga pangit ang pakiramdam, it's not because of the fever. Okay? So let's make clear on this. Now, it's not because of the fever. It's because of the infection itself, the Omicron. No?
Okay po.
Okay. So it can cause other symptoms, no? Other symptoms like sore throat, body malaise, di ba? Weakness, cough, colds, etc. No? Okay.
Yung 2 years old po, yun ang nagka-sore throat.
Yan nga.
Pero yung tatlong boys, lagdat lang po. Sipon.
Okay. Yan nga, iba-iba.
Konting ubo lang, pero ang hirap po kasi yung sa bata hindi na marunong magsalita.
Yeah.
Hindi marunong magsabi kung ano yung masakit and then matamlay. Siguro kaya ang dami naghanap ng tempra sa mga household.
Yeah.
Kasi ang common knowledge nga po do, sabihin natin, pag sinat, ninenervous na ang parents eh.
Kaya importante itong lecture neto.
And then ano po dati, di ba, ang thermometer may mercury, tapos pinagbawal na digital, and then we can have this thermal na thermometer.
Yeah.
And then yung inaano po sa tenga. Okay, yung tinatapat lang po sa tenga. So siguro medyo may ano lang po ako dun sa bakit nga po may iba-ibang basis ng body temperature. Lalo na kung halimbawa, dati naman yung thermal tinatapat lang sa noo ngayon eh. Hindi naman po sa kilikili, hindi naman sa puwet, hindi na sa bibig, kundi tinatapat na lang po yung thermal scanner eh.
Okay, so what are you trying to drive at? The
Siguro po yung
ibang klaseng thermometer talaga. Now that's why I said, for practical reason, just use the digital. Bawal na yung mercury eh. So
bawal na po yung mercury.
Digital, the most practical, put it in the armpit. No? Okay? Mas accurate yun kaysa
mas accurate po yung sa armpit
kaysa sa forehead, sa kamay. Diba? Kita mo, up to now, ang dami pang pag pumapasok ka ng mga establishment, mga mall, ibabaril yung kamay mo.
Yung iba po, tinatapat lang yung kamay.
Sa akin, useless na yan eh. Useless na yan. No? Okay.
Which is really more accurate.
Saka parang they just go through that motion, senseless.
Mabilisan na lang kaysa sa armpit.
Hindi mabilisan, wala nang kabuluhan.
Walang contact. Yun ang inaano dun eh. Contact lens.
Okay. So baka yung fever is not already a sign of COVID. It's the sore throat. Ang pinaka-common sa Omicron is the sore throat, no? Throat infection, no?
So I think it's more really advisable yung sa kilikili.
Okay. So try to, if you agree with what I'm saying here, because I'm trying to clarify on the myth and trying to give you some practical tips, no? Okay, try to help me disseminate this information, no? Okay, to educate the others, no? Okay.
Doc, there are some questions in the chat box.
Yeah, good. Shoot.
Okay po. Number 1 from Jacqueline Tong. Are temperature readings taken through the ear more or less accurate than recordings taken by mouth or rectal?
I wouldn't say it's less accurate, okay? But what I can say, they differ. They have different registration of the temperature. No? As I said, yung sa rectum, yan ang pinakamataas. No? Okay, usually less than 1 centigrade higher lang naman yan. Less than 1 centigrade higher. No? Okay. And then, sa ear, I'm not sure whether the ear is better than the sa mouth or higher than the mouth. Okay. Pero dun sa skin itself, mas lesser yon. No? Okay. So just remember that you have different registration o yung lumalabas na readings sa mga different types of thermometer, di ba? Yung iba may barrel, yung iba yung digital, no? Yung iba naman, okay? Yung what's more important, you can see the trending na lang, no? If you rely on the ear, look for the trend, no? Kung tumataas o bababa. Or you can use the 38 na lang to simplify things. If you don't have a baseline temperature, no? Use the 38, no? Okay.
Question from Jocelyn.
Okay.
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 I have used ice with water, dip a towel and pahid on forehead and armpits of the person with very high fever. Is this practice correct?
Yeah, pwede yon. Basta wag lang, you can do anything you want to do just to for the person to feel better, to lower the temperature, okay? Kahit na temporary, while waiting for that fever to disappear. Eventually it will disappear as long as the body resistance, the body is fighting itself. Successful na yon. Okay? Pag nawala yung fever, ibig sabihin, okay, medyo round 1, baka nanalo na siya. Okay? Parang sa boxing yan, round 1, nanalo na siya. No? So you can use ice water, you can use yung tinatawag na tepid sponge bath, yung dip of the towel and the water, no, on the forehead, armpit, okay? And then you can also use yung mga konting ventilador kung masyadong mainit, no? Okay? Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
Maria Pusta Polotan.
Yeah.
Our family doctor recommended to an alcohol rub and to apply an ice bag on the head when we were children and we were experiencing chills, to place our feet in a basin of hot water. Okay ba po ito?
Okay. Alcohol can give you a rapid effect, no, on the body. Yung parang temporary lang siya, na evaporation lang yan. Feeling of medyo malamig na konti, no? But if it's causing you some chills, no, wag mo nang ituloy, no? Okay. Usually sa adult, pwedeng konting, if talagang mainit na inis ka na, okay, konting alcohol rub, no? Okay. Konti lang naman. Then after that, you feel better, no? And then after that, you just wait, no? Okay. So the fever will not instantly disappear, no? All the time. Depende sa body resistance mo, depende sa the how your body is reacting to the infection, no? Kung minsan yung iba 2 hours lang tapos na, wala nang fever, di ba? You have heard of these stories, no? Okay, 2 hours lang pusang nawala yung temperature from 38 naging 37, di ba? Nawala, no? Okay.
From Jacqueline Tong, is it true that normal body temperature of the elderly, mga 80s, are generally lower than people who are younger?
Yeah, there are studies that shows that, no? Okay. Na medyo mababa because of lower metabolic rate, no? Ganon, no? Okay, but it varies from person to person, as I said. Yeah, the best way, the most reliable way is really to take your own baseline temperature na lang. At what age? Okay. So yung, let's say kung 40 ka, if you take your baseline temperature, it will not stay that, yung temperature will not stay as is. So you take, after 10 years, 50 years old ka na, if you want to use my style, you take your baseline temperature again. You can see if it will vary. Di ba? So when you're 70 na, you have another baseline temperature. Yes, sabi ko, the best way to manage this is get your own baseline temperature na lang, no? Rather than listening to all these yung mga yung mga published report, the average temperature is this or that. No? Mag-iiba-iba yan eh. Mag-iiba-iba. No?
Thank you.
Basta importante may feeling of warm ka pa eh. Na? Warm, yung mainit na mainit, plus may registered temperature. Hindi lang isa ha. Okay. Any more?
Doc, ako po may question.
Okay.
Doc, yung pong paracetamol and acetaminophen are one and the same?
Yeah, supposed to be. I don't know whether we have acetaminophen here. Pero strictly speaking, pareho lang sila. Strictly speaking, acetaminophen and paracetamol are the same. No? Okay.
Okay, Doc. Thank you. Doc, ano po yung red flag na kailangang mag-take ka ng paracetamol? Siyempre, una, wag mo, as much as possible, wag agad-agad mag-take ng paracetamol na let the fever function, gawin niya yung sarili, yung trabaho niya. Kailan po tayo, ano kung yung red flag na kailangan magparacetamol?
Strictly speaking, you can wait naman. You can wait and wait and wait. But if you really feel bad, no, we don't like you to suffer also, di ba? Okay. So you can, if you feel bad na at 39, kumuha ka na. Okay. 39. Or if you can, kung may 30, kaya ng katawan ng 39.2, 39.45, kung yung threshold mo mataas, then you can wait. Baka 40, pag 40, uminom ka na. No? Okay. 40 degrees centigrade is considered as high grade na eh. Di ba? Yung 39 is still moderate grade eh. Di ba? Okay.
Talagang ano yun, itong lecture, itong pep talk na ito, Doc, kasi yung mga mates na nakaugalian ko, pag 38 agad-agad. Basta agad-agad paracetamol, Tylenol, Biogesic, ganun. So hindi pala dapat ganun.
Yeah. Kaya nga tinawag na myth and ano. Okay. That's why I hope you will. I don't aim to change the world. I don't aim to change the whole Filipino population. At least if you can benefit at least 30 people. You 30 people. Okay na sa akin. No. Okay. In my 73 years of age, I don't take paracetamol for temperature that below 39. No, ganun. Okay. Any more questions? No more? If there are no more questions, okay, I hope you can help me propagate or educate your relatives, your friends on this. Okay. The reason why I took this up right away because I know, because tina-timing ko lang naman eh, no? Kaya I pinospone ko muna yung thyroid cancer, no? Kasi medyo maraming may COVID ngayon, Omicron, kaya yung nag-uubusan yung mga nagpapanik buying medicine, paracetamol, no? Okay. Yung pa isa, yung paracetamol, you don't have to buy the branded, ha? You can take the generic. Pwede yun, ha? Generic, if you have to take paracetamol. Okay. So, okay. So if there are no more questions, we can call it a day. Now we will push through with the part 2 thyroid cancer management next week. No? Okay.